Getting back into some of the modeling stuff that we had gotten into initially, what are some future aspirations for you in that sense?
I think just just educating myself more and more about the modeling industry, you know, Native American, Hispanic struggles. I want to be part of that. Like I want to be a part of that change. I want to be in a room of important people who make changes for our communities and for the people. And I don't know. I just get really worked up about it. Like I just really want to do that. And I'm not gonna lie, sometimes it's hard because I feel like again you have to know networks and connections and things like that. But um yeah, I just really want to change the community. I want to learn more. I want to know what our biggest issues are. I want to help with that.
Hey, Vivian, how's it going?
Doing good. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Thank you so much for joining me to record this today. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad to be here. I mean, when you messaged me, I was super excited, and I'm just excited to be here. I mean, like I've never
Awesome.
been on a podcast before, and for me to be like someone in your podcast is an honor. So thank you for selecting me to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for taking the time to do this as well. Um, have you had breakfast yet?
I have had breakfast. Listen, I went to the gym. And then I had my breakfast, and what did I have? I had Frosted Flakes, and I played Wordle with my fiance while we had Frosted Flakes together, and then I kissed him for work, and now I'm having my coffee. So that
Awesome,
was my
awesome,
breakfast.
awesome, awesome. Yeah, so before we get started, if you want to let the people know who you are, what you do, any likes and dislikes in personal life, um, anything and everything you want to share about yourself, the floor is yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, my name is Vivian Bunch. I am a model and actress. You can find me on VivBun on Instagram. And I've been doing that for, I want to say almost 3 years, 2 or 3 years. But yeah, so it's been a journey, and I'm from Morrison, Oklahoma, and I came to Oklahoma City area for college, and then now here I am. So that's me.
Awesome. Awesome. I'll make sure to link your Instagram in the show notes or the description of the video, wherever it is that you're listening or watching to this, um, for those of you out there. But yeah, I was going to ask, what did you study in college? I'm just wanting to go back to the college time because that's where we met a few
Hmm.
years back. It feels like it's been ages.
I know.
Probably what, 5, 6 years, maybe?
Yes.
Yeah, I think,
Like
yeah.
crazily enough, yes, it's been that long. It's been that long. It's just crazy.
Yes, yes. So yeah, let's go back to college time. You said you moved to the Oklahoma City area for school.
Hmm.
What did you do in school?
So I went to the University of Central Oklahoma, which is obviously where I met you. And I went, initially, it was kind of funny. I initially went for art education. Technically, it was supposed to be graphic design, but at that moment, they didn't have a graphic design program, or it was very, very new. And so they put me in art education, which is basically being like an art teacher. And I was like, that's not for me. So then after that, I actually talked to my aunt, and she was a human resources, um, I don't know, like a coordinator or something. And I kind of talked to her about that. And so it kind of inspired me to do human resources. So my degree is in human resource management. And I also did like little like 16 personalities tests where they tell you like, oh, these are the best careers for you. So I did those tests as well, and human resources always popped up. And so that's kind of what I did. I went, did that, and I actually really enjoyed my education at UCO, and there's a lot of great professors in that program, a lot of great professors, and they helped me actually get a job right after college. So shout out to them. They're phenomenal. They're great. So if anyone is thinking of human resources, don't worry. Also, if you're going to UCO, don't worry, they're great professors and they're amazing, and they just want to help their students. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Um, Before we had started recording, you had sort of mentioned that you'd worked in the corporate field and then made the transitioning to modeling. What was your experience in the corporate world like?
It's a good question. It was very eye-opening. I think there was a big difference between degree and working, that I wasn't aware of. I think everyone paints this picture of 9 to 5 as a beautiful thing. And it is. It can be very beneficial, and depending on people's lifestyles. And I did it at like 20. Let's see. I was 22. I'm 25 now, so I was 22 at the time, and not like looking back. I'm like, wow, I was really young. Like I feel like I'm still considered young, 25, right? Like
Yeah,
if
25
you
is
want
still
to
young.
branch it out to like 100-year-old person, I'm still relatively really young. But thinking
Oh,
about being
absolutely.
22 and being in a corporate setting, I didn't. I had a lot of imposter syndrome, like a lot of imposter syndrome, and I didn't know how to get out of it. I enjoyed my work environment. My peers were great. I always got along with everyone. There wasn't someone that I didn't get along with. Um, and yeah, and it was a good work environment. But I think what I realized was that I think the job itself wasn't fulfilling for me, and it was a couple months of that. And I even talked. And the reason why it wasn't fulfilling for me was because I would just get done with my work so soon. Like I was that person. I would just like, I'm gonna do this job. I'm just gonna do it right. Everything has to be perfect. I'm gonna get it done, and then I would just not have anything else to do. And I talked to my boss, and I was like, "Hey, I kind of want to like give me more stuff to do. What can I do? What can I do to like level myself up?" And it wasn't. I feel like that conversation wasn't really helpful. And actually, a couple months later, I got laid off. So that was also very jarring because I always thought, you know, the society tells you work for a company for this amount of time, retire, live happy, whatever, right? And I had this vision that I was going to work at this company and work my way up. And then I got laid off and I was like, what do I do? So I kind of reevaluated for a couple months and like, okay, what did I like? What did I not like about it? And just kind of went from there. And there was some good things about it, like again, like my coworkers were good, the cultural environment were good, but I think I learned very quickly that the job does matter on what I work on, and it has to be fulfilling for me or I will not enjoy it. And a lot of people, everyone's different, right, on what a job looks like for them. I think for me, it has to be fulfilling and it has to be something that I love, more than the money. And so that's just my perspective. But yeah, that was my little moment in corporate America for a bit.
Gotcha. That's kind of interesting, right? Because I think, and this is not me trying to dunk on anybody or say that people don't care enough about their work and so on, but I think it's nice when work challenges you, I suppose,
Mhm.
to where you are able to sort of work through things and then, like you said, sort of climb up the ladder. But then when you're not getting that, it can kind of feel, I don't know, for the lack of the better word, for the lack of a better word, boring in some sense. You get bored
Mhm.
easily because you're done working. I mean, I kind of experienced that in my time working as a lab tech for about 10 months too. Like once you figured out what to do, there's not much from there.
Right.
Sure, like the daily things sort of did keep it a little engaging, but other than that, it can get a little boring too quickly. Um, so yeah, so I completely understand what you mean in that sense of how it didn't feel fulfilling. Um, so I'm guessing that this, like what you're doing right now in terms of modeling and acting, is keeping you very busy compared to your HR job.
Yes. Yes. And I also learned that I don't like to like sit down. So
Mhm.
I think that was also another thing is I like to be active, and I think being 9 to 5, you're just sitting all day. And they do have those standing desks, but it's just not the same. and I'm very face to face. And so those are all things that I learned, after that experience happened. And going into modeling and acting and all, it's so amazing because I'm not gonna lie, no, it does not pay well, you know. But I will say I've developed a lot of relationships through that, a lot of communications, or not communication, well, yeah, communication, but a lot of community out in it. And to be honest, Oklahoma is so small that you kind of like, someone, and then that person's like, oh, you follow so and so? Do you know them? And I'll be like, oh my gosh, yes, I do know so and so. So there's that community, and everyone is super nice. Everyone is super helpful. Everyone tries to, I would say, advocate for each other, or I try to advocate for the people that I'm like, yes, they're passionate people. Um, they're working hard, things like that. And so it's a lot different. It's a lot different. Everyone is obviously working for themselves, but there's sometimes events that do happen. Like today, the Capitol is hosting a Oklahoma Film and Music event, and so I'm going to go to that afterwards. Um, Things like that, and that's where you find your people and just kind of start networking and talking and getting to know each other. And I personally, that's my favorite part of the experience. So yeah.
Awesome. Let's get into what got you into modeling. We kind of talked about this beforehand, but the floor is yours to sort of get into that a little more in detail.
Yeah. So as I told you previously, I actually had a modeling class in the 8th grade. And the way I grew up, so my dad was, my mom and dad were divorced when I was 2. So the way it worked is when I had school, I would stay with my dad. And then in the summer, I would stay with my mom. And my mom lives in Panama. And so when I would go in the summer to visit my mom, she's a single mom, and so she would put me in a lot of like extracurricular things. So I've done everything under the sun you could think of as a kid: karate, soccer, art, everything. And one of the ones that my mom wanted me to be in was like, oh, you should do modeling. And I, low key, in the hearts of hearts, I'm a kind of a tom girl. So in the hearts of hearts, I was like, no, that's not for me. And my mom eventually was kind of like, you should really do it. And I was like, all right, I'll do it. So I did it. It wasn't my favorite experience, and I think it could have been better. But personally, as someone from Panama and also someone from the United States, you hear this very often, but a lot of people feel conflicted with their Spanish and like how good it is. You know what I mean? So for me, going to Panama, I just felt like my Spanish wasn't good enough, so I wouldn't really talk to anyone in the room. So, which is very out of character for me. Being here in the United States, I talk to everyone. And so I would go into the room and really not talk to anyone. I didn't really make friends. I just kind of like participated, and that was really it. And then every time they're like, oh, you need to fix this, I'd be a little bit butthurt. I was like, ugh, I'm doing terrible. So it was just not a good experience. And but I mean, the class was good, but I think in my personal experience, it was just not for me at the time. And then fast forward later, I worked for the corporate company, and then I got laid off. And that was a big life altering moment for me, just because I'm 25. At the moment, I was 22. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to work for this company until I'm retired. So that's like the American social norm, right? That every person wants for you to do is to work for this company until you're dead. So when that happened, I was very surprised, and I was not aware that that was going to happen. And I kind of had a moment to reflect and be, really sit down with my thoughts and journal and read books like self-help books and kind of figure out myself. Because your 20s is all about figuring out yourself. And I was like, what's something I want to do that, if I look back and when I'm 60, when I'm retired, that like I could say I did it, and something that I couldn't do when I'm 60, and something that I've kind of always wanted like to do, and that piqued my interest. And so that's when I did modeling. And I kind of sat down and was like, well, who do I know as a model? Like, we're in Oklahoma. Like, there's no models in Oklahoma. And so I actually did have a friend, and I DM'd her on Instagram and I said, hey, I'm really thinking about the modeling business. I know you're a model. Could you give me like some pointers? I'm really researching hard on it because I'm a big researcher. I love to be prepared for everything. So I was researching modeling. What kind of model could I be? What the industry needs right now? Things like that. And we eventually met up, and she was, I just love her. Shout out to Claire Croft. She is doing amazing right now. She is a model in Oklahoma, and she's popping off, and I support her. She's just phenomenal, and she gave me a lot of pointers, and yeah, that's kind of how I started. I talked to her, and she kind of guided me and introduced me some people, and it just kind of flows from there. You meet someone, they know someone, and then you just keep going. So that's how it started.
Awesome. Um, you mentioned how you felt like there probably wasn't much of a market for modeling in Oklahoma, but has that perspective changed over time, or do you still feel the same about it?
I think now that I've been in it for 2 years, I still feel the same about it. I did have an agency for a time. And I actually left that agency because my market wasn't here. My market was actually somewhere else in the States. So, and I realized that, and it was no fault to the agency at all. But I just kind of found this market by myself, and they weren't really providing that market for me. I will say I'm 5'6", so that is a little bit difficult because if you're a traditional model, you're minimum 5'8". And that's more runway and things like that. And I think Oklahoma still is a little bit traditional, and so they still look for those candidates, and so it is hard. But I will say I have done some modeling in Oklahoma. Um, it is usually voluntarily, but I enjoy that experience because I get to meet these people, I get to work with these people, and they're amazing. And I should like I want to help my community, and I want to advocate for my community as much as I can. I mean, that's to me that's the point of modeling. My point of modeling is to advocate for my community in any way that I can. And um, so I would say primarily no, there's not really a market. Every once in a while I'll get a gig. But yeah, long story short, that's my answer.
Gotcha. Let's explore this community aspect of things. What would you say reflects the community that you're a part of, and why do you feel it's important to sort of or share about that community through modeling?
Absolutely. I love this question. And I can already feel the passion coming into me. But no, I would say my passions and would be Native American communities and Hispanic communities. Native, I'm Cherokee Nation, and Hispanic, I'm Panamanian, and so I think uh, those are communities that need to be represented. Hispanic wise, I feel like there's definitely more of a Mexican presence in modeling and acting and things like that, and I think that is phenomenal. And Mexico is such a big country with so many cultures within it. Like it's not just one, it's like a lot. And so I think that is important. And I know for me, Panama is a little country. It is the size of Oklahoma. Like the population of Oklahoma is the entire country. And so I just feel like as a model, it's my mission to represent that country um, as much as I can, to show that this country does exist, what we're about, our culture, things like that. But also Native American wise, Cherokee Nation, it is a big tribe. Um, it's one of the bigger ones. But I think it also helps because Native Americans just, for a long time, they've just lived a very stressful and difficult life. Even reservations, like especially in like New Mexico and Arizona, it's very difficult. And I think it's important to represent the Native American community. And the Native American community is a very I mean, it's a very small percentage if you're comparing to the different ethnic groups in the United States. And so I just think it's important, and that I should be educating everyone on Panamanian, on being Cherokee, and things like that. Just really spread the word.
Super cool. For those of them who are listening to this who are not aware of what reservations mean or what they are, could you elaborate on that a little further?
Can you repeat that again?
Like you said, reservations, right? Like there's different reservations within the Native American community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like for someone who's listening who might not know, what are reservations? What does that mean? Like, I mean, I generally know there's like Cherokee, and then there's a couple of others. I guess Muskogee is one of them,
Mm-hmm.
maybe.
Yeah.
Um, like, what are those, and like, how are they separated into those groups? If that makes sense.
Okay. So I'm not gonna lie, I am still learning. I'll just kind of give you a brief upbringing. So my dad is Cherokee, my grandpa's Cherokee, all of these things, right? But they never. My grandpa was adopted, so he never really learned his roots. And bringing that to my dad, he never really learned his roots. Bringing it to me, I never really learned. And so going to college, though, I think was a really big upbringing, because we had the Native American Student Association, and then we had the Native American Success Initiative. And so that's really where I learned a lot of, you know, tribes, reservations, culture, things like that, right? So I will say I'm not the best person to um, know all the information, but I'm still learning, and I continue to learn, and that's very important as a human being, in my perspective. Now, reservations, from my understanding, reservations are the land that Native Americans own or were given. As you know, like for many years, Native Americans, they were the ones in the United States before the United States was a thing. You know, then European countries came here, and they kept pushing them and pushing them, pushing them, pushing them out. So, and then whenever they found oil or gas or gold, they would just push them out again. So, especially in Oklahoma, I mean, we're known. I mean, we're known for the tribe. We're known for, I don't know if it's like 39 tribes, something like that. It's something crazy. And it's the most tribes, I think, in a state than other states. I could be wrong. But yeah, those are basically, each tribe has typically a reservation. Cherokee Nation, capital is Tahlequah. That's our little area. And then every state has their own reservation. They typically have like their own government. So we have like a principal chief. For Cherokee, I can speak for that. I can't really speak for the other tribes. But that's just kind of how it works. Like, yes, it's weird. You are technically still in the United States, but in reservation, there is still their own government, their own system that they help the community and establish things. So I don't know if that helped, but that's kind of my answer right there.
No, that's a good introduction to sort of understand how these different groups and reservations might work, because I did know the part of, like, they have their own individual governments and so on, in terms of how they operate. But yeah, for some of them who are listening to this might not know about that, because I think there's also this Indian American versus American Indian differentiation some people might not be aware of. I mean, I'm not American, but I'm an Indian from India, whereas American Indians are Indians who were living in the mainland of the United States before the Europeans invaded them. And if I'm not getting my history wrong, because they looked a certain way, they were described to look as Indians, I guess. Was that
Yes.
what that was?
Yeah, where Christopher Columbus came, he was like, I'm in
Right,
India. We gotta name an
right,
Indians. And they're like, that's not the case.
right,
Like,
right.
honey,
Right.
that's not it. But
Yeah,
yeah, that did happen, yes.
yes. So that's sort of the, I guess, not connection necessarily, but I guess the sort of common ground there in terms of the term Indian and the context in which it's used. I guess in different places.
I never thought about that.
Yeah, because initially when I took history over here, that was the first semester that I was here too. When the professor would say Indian, but she would talk about a lot of different things, I was like, oh, okay, this is not the Indian that I'm aware of. But now that she sort of contextualized it, saying, oh, this is they referenced Indians as people who were on mainland United States before the Europeans invaded. That was where like that light bulb went off. Being like, oh, okay. Um, and you know how there's those jokes of um, probably slightly racist jokes, so I won't go into them.
No, you're good. You're good.
Um, but yeah, the casinos versus the shop owners, kind of
Oh
different.
yes.
The
Yeah.
jokes that people make, but yeah.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, so I guess I sort of understood that after I moved here, but I did not know that when I was back home.
Wow.
So that was kind of interesting to know and learn after getting here. But yeah, you mentioned that you're part Panamanian as well.
Hmm.
Um, what memories do you have of Panama, and how has that sort of influenced you as a person?
Oh my gosh. I have so many memories. I bless my mom, again, single mom. Income is completely different down there than in the United States. So I definitely didn't appreciate it as much at the time because you're a kid. But now that I'm 25 and older and I can kind of look back, I definitely appreciate every single moment that I get an opportunity to go to Panama. Um, my mom has always paid for my flights going down there as a kid. Even today, like I literally went in February for Carnival for the first time, so I never been. Finally went to Carnival for the first time. That was an experience in itself. Um, I have a lot of good memories though. I so funny enough. So like I said, my mom and dad were divorced when I was 2. So technically, at the time, I actually went with my mom. My dad was in the military, so you know, I went with my mom, and I actually went to what was the school? It was like Crossroads Christian Academy was the school I went to, and it was from pre-K to first grade, and so I had my childhood a little bit in Panama, and then again, and then my mom and dad went back to court, and then my dad had me. So that's how that panned out. And so since then, since I was been like 5 or 6, I would go to Panama every summer. Um, it it was a good experience. I had my cousins. My mom has multiple siblings, so I had multiple cousins, and I grew up with a little bit, and so I would honestly a lot of times too. My mom is a businesswoman. She's a saleswoman that travels to other countries. So a lot of times I would stay with my aunt, and my aunt had 4 kids. So I would stay with my aunt, and I would hang out with my cousins. I would sometimes wait for them to get home from school because the way the school system works there is their summer is, from my understanding, December to February. So in March to November, they're in school. So when it was my summer, they were still in school. So a lot of times I would wait for them to like come home and like do their homework, like, hey, you want to hang, stuff like that. And so I have a lot of memories with my cousins, just kind of like spending the night and like playing what is it, Wolf, like the card game. Um, that and going to the movies, what else? Going to the movies, going to the mall. Like that's the main thing you do is you go to the mall or the movies. It's a big city, so. Um, and then my aunt was the one that kind of. I love my aunt so much. She's the one that kind of introduced me to more cultural things in Panama. I would say my mom and my aunt. My mom, she a lot of times she would take off work to travel Panama around with me. Like she'd be like, "Okay, we're gonna go to Chiriquí this time," which is where these volcanoes are in Panama, but they're not active at all. And so up there near the volcanoes, there's strawberry fields and people have strawberries, and it's crazy because it's like everything was made out of strawberries, like strawberry smoothies, strawberries and cream, like everything. And then we would go to this other side of Panama, and it was kind of like a beachy area, but it was, it's called, I want to say it's called San Blas, but it's like the area that is actually ran by Native Americans. Like the Native Americans in Panama own that territory of land, and they allow people from the surrounding areas to come and visit and kind of learn about the culture and lay on the beach and things about that, but kind of learn about their government system as well. And then as for my aunt, she was the one that kind of introduced me to our traditional wear, which is the pollera. From my understanding, she's the one that made my pollera. So if you ever see that on my social media, she was the one that made it. And she's actually, she has her own pollera in Panama, and she's always advocating for cultural things all the time. And so um, it was good. I love Panama. I love going to Panama. I soak it in every time. I try to do, something different every time. I always like, Mom, why don't we go try this? Things like that. And so, yeah, I appreciate my family a lot. I love them a lot, and they've really done a lot for me. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, like I can't imagine how that having to move, or not move, but like travel to different places. I mean, if it's something you don't want to get into, please let me know. But um, like being a child of a divorced parents, and like
Mhm.
how that can influence your upbringing, I guess is something that, at least from the part of the world that I am in, we're not really aware of as much, because it's not something, it's quite, I mean, it's still, I mean, not saying that it's not taboo here, but it's much more taboo over there.
Mhm.
So like you don't see it happen that often, or at least I never grew up seeing it that often. So like, if you just can't imagine how having to go at some point to your father's place, or at some point to your mother's place, influences your upbringing as a person. So I can imagine how important it was for your aunt also to be involved in when your mother would go to work and so on. But that was just a thought I had. But no, I just can't imagine how that influences a person. How do you feel that's influenced you? Would that be something you're interested in talking in? If not, it's completely fine.
No, I think it's interesting because, again, like as an adult, I didn't realize how weird it was. Like you grow up when you're so young, right? When I'm 2, when you're so young and like growing up like that, it's so normal for you. Like it's funny because a lot of people would pity me, like, man, you must miss your mom, or man, you must miss your dad. But in a way, like I kind of knew how the schedule worked. Like I would go visit my mom for 3 months, I would go visit my dad for the remaining months, things like that. And don't get me wrong. I mean, don't get me wrong. There were times where I'm like, oh man, I do miss my mom, or I do miss my dad. Like, you know. But I think it shaped me a lot. Like, I think it shaped me in a lot of different ways. And I think I kind of had best of both worlds. Um, I mean, my dad was in the military, so I traveled a lot, and because I traveled a lot, and then also my mom was in a different country. So because I traveled so much, I was able to make friends so easy. I was just that kid that was like, "Hey, how are you? I'm Vivian. Like, what's your name?" And I think that came into my personality really strong, really young. Again, sometimes in Panama it's a little bit difficult because it's a Spanish barrier. That's a little bit different in my perspective, but um, still, I think that really helped just traveling around a lot like that. And yeah, I mean, I've lived in multiple states. I've lived in Panama for a little bit, so I think there's a lot of cultural awareness, which sometimes I don't know. I think it's just so important for people to travel. Like I'm a big travel person. I think it really shapes you. You learn a lot. You learn a lot about how people work. You learn a lot about awareness. Like if you're in a city, Oklahoma City is so chill. Sometimes you can leave your door unlocked and no one does anything. I don't do that. I'm not saying I do that for people out there, but I'm saying like compared to another city like Panama, if you do that, you're robbed. Done. Like your purse is gone. So just cultural differences like that, awarenesses like that. You can't have your phone out. Someone's gonna take it from you in Panama. You can't just be doing that. You can't have it in your back pocket. Someone's gonna steal it from your back pocket. And I don't know. I just think it's very important to travel, and so I think having divorced parents, yes, was difficult as a kid. You know, you do see people with their mom and dad. You're like, man, I wish I could have that. You know, um, but in the end, I think it was super beneficial for me for as who I am as a person. So
Gotcha. Yeah, because I mean, again, I don't know a lot of people who have grown up in that manner, but I guess in some sense it's kind of awesome that you're able to have like a positive perspective of it and how it sort of helped shape you as a person. So I guess that's really cool, and I mean, kudos to you for that. Because yeah, I don't know, like I can imagine how that can negatively affect someone to where they struggle to probably figure out who they are as people. I don't know. It's just a thought that I'm having as we were talking, but um, there's also. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, sorry. I mean, I definitely think there were those moments. Like, I could give you one example. Is like, I think I didn't really grow up in a Hispanic community. I didn't grow up in a Hispanic community until I moved to Oklahoma City. So out of the 18 years of my life, or I would say 6 to 18, um, I don't really remember growing up in that environment or even Native American environment. Um, I will say my dad's been married multiple times, and his one of his wives, she was technically native from Alaska. It's very different. It's very, very, very different. And so I do think sometimes that was like something that I was like not realizing something I needed, because I kind of did feel like an outsider. Like, it was funny. I actually had my best friend here over for the weekend, and we were looking at old pictures. And in my head, I always thought that I looked white. Like, I just looked white. And I was like, that's who I am, like growing up. And then I realized when we were looking at these pictures, I was like, I am not white. like, yes, I grew up kind of in that space, but at the same time I was like looking at myself and I could just see myself out of all these kids, and I look completely different, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like I didn't realize how different I looked. But also I would bring up music. I'm like, guys, I love reggaeton, like it's such a, I love it. And they're like, and I'll be like, have you listened to this? No one listened to it, because I'm the only Hispanic in my school. So I mean, there are those moments. I would say that it's just kind of like, oh, man, I wish someone else who's Hispanic, could have the same, love for reggaeton as me, or have this understanding of going back to a country that's not the United States and come back and like, or like someone I could practice Spanish to. Because the only time I ever practiced Spanish was when I was on the phone with my family, or if I was going to a Mexican restaurant. And sometimes that doesn't really help. Like, your Spanish eventually like fades away. Not to say that it leaves, but it definitely does get harder when I would go back to Panama and try to talk in Spanish. And they're like, your Spanish is awful. And I'm like, I know, I'm sorry. Like, I don't know what to do. So I will say that. I will say I've had that experience. But I think overall, again, I think I had that awareness, and I think that was very valid and important to understand in my life. But I also am grateful for like the life that I lived, because not a lot of people say they've been to these countries or met these people or had these experiences. I feel like I'm kind of in this unique position, and I'm sure I'm not the only one in the United States or in the world to have this position, obviously, but I think it does make it very unique for what I have experienced in my life compared to other people.
Sure, for sure. Has that in any way influenced your views on marriage at all? I mean, since you're engaged now.
That's a topic in itself.
Okay.
It was a big, big, big part of my concern in life. I was very scared of getting married in my life. And I'm so grateful for the partner that I have. Like, and I'm so blessed and thankful. But it was a big concern. And I think if you ever ask my partner, like, they know. And so I had divorced parents, and to be honest, my I don't think my dad and my mom, I mean, I love my parents, right? We all love our parents, but they, they have some mistakes and flaws, and we do too. And I think growing up in those environments, I never understood how to be with someone, and I was scared to be with someone. Like I grew up in a small school, class of 32 people. So I was just like, these people ain't it for me. Like there's no one I'm interested in. And I would have little crushes here and there, but like I was scared and I didn't know how to approach that and work with that. And and then, I started going to college, and it was kind of funny. My dad always said, he's like, you should wait till you get to college and then maybe you should start dating. Like maybe you'll find someone there. And I kind of did that. I didn't date anyone till I went to college. And, then I was like, yes, like I'm going to try all these classes, try all these organizations, meet all these people. And then I got into my first relationship, and we were just talking about this yesterday. He's like, do you remember that you said you were going to be married for like until 8 years after a relationship? And I was like, yeah, definitely not the case. And that's okay. Everyone has their time, but looking back, I'm like, that is a long time for someone to wait. And I think it did have, how do I explain it? I guess in a sense, like I always wanted a relationship, and I've always been a relationship girl. I've never really been the kind of person to hook up, or it's okay for people to hook up. It's just not in my nature. I'm just such a relationship person. And so when I went into my first and last relationship, um, it was kind of eye opening, and I learned a lot. I think for a long time I was very insecure because my partner had been a little bit more experienced in the dating world than I was. And I think that was very concerning for me because not that they dated a whole lot, but you know, every time you date someone, you learn a lot, right? You learn a lot about yourself. You learn about what kind of person you want to date. And I feel very fortunate because my person just ended up being my person. They were hardworking, which is something that I was looking for. They're funny. Like they can be serious, but we can also be unserious and be goofy together and joke around together. And I think I was looking for someone like that too. Um, and I wanted someone driven. I wanted someone independent. Someone I didn't have to like constantly like validate, or someone that I knew they were going to be okay. Like I didn't have to take care of them. Like we could succeed together. We could have our own things together and help each other and support each other. And I don't think at the time, hmm, I think I was looking for that subconsciously. And that's how I ended up with my partner. But I think there was just a lot of things I never dated. Um, it was just so foreign to me. And, but again, just communicating with your partner, um, being open and honest, I think those are very, very valuable and necessary things in a relationship to work. And we kind of worked out. So, just having those insecurities of like, I've never dated anyone but you, and being very unexperienced in the dating world and what's okay and what's not okay, um, talking it through I'm so thankful for the person I have to kind of like work with that. So, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, congratulations to you once again for being
Thank
engaged.
you.
Um,
Thanks.
that's awesome. Um, in terms of this is, I guess, the tangential nature of the way I think, I guess, but I wanted to sort of jump back to something you mentioned about Panama and like carnival or carnival. Is that how you say it? What was that experience like? Because you said that that was something really cool that you got to experience. I'd like for you to sort of elaborate on that a little further.
Yes, carnival. I want to go back and experience it again. And I do have a friend who's Panamanian, um, who lives in Oklahoma, and she said that I think her cousin is going to compete in carnival. So we're kind of thinking about going together next year. But so basically, carnival, how it works is it's kind of like Mardi Gras, but like Hispanic style, Latin style, Mardi Gras, New Orleans. But Carnival, from my understanding, it's just 4 days of partying. 4 days of partying, drinking, dancing. And then obviously I think from then on you go into Lent. So there's Fat Tuesday and then goes into Lent. That's technically what's supposed to happen. But I just went because I just wanted to party, if I'm being completely honest. I'm not religious. And it was something that it's kind of like everyone goes. Like since you were 18, you go every year. And a lot of my cousins had gone in the past. My cousins are around my age. So, but I had never gone because I was always in school, Like I said, the United States, we're in school, from August to May. So I was always in school and never had the opportunity. So, my mom thankfully booked me a ticket to go to Panama. And I was there like on a Monday. And then I think on Thursdays when we left. And it's about a 5-hour drive from the city to Carnival. And the biggest carnival in Panama is in Las Tablas. And so Las Tablas is like it's like a little pueblito. It's like a little town that is in Panama, but that is where Carnival really happens. Technically, every little town, the city, they all have Carnival, but the biggest one is in Las Tablas. So that's where we went. We went to Las Tablas. It was me, my mom, my mom's boyfriend, my aunt, one of her kids, my uncle, and then my cousin's friends. And we all went. And so it was a blast. It was literally so foreign to me because the party life there is completely different than Oklahoma. So yeah, it's very different. And so we went to the tablas. We had my aunt and my uncle knew this lady who had a house next to the beach. So it was gorgeous. It was literally like this little beach house, and you would wake up, open the window, and the beach is right there. Like we're literally on the beach. All right. So we stayed there, and I want to say it starts on a Thursday. Let's see. We got done, I want to say on a Tuesday, Monday, Saturday, Sunday. I think it started on a Friday or Saturday. I can't remember, but it's like for 4 days. And so I think we went that night. Yes, we went that night it's called Peache. And what Peache is, it's like a club that's designed to be outdoors. But it's like almost like a pop-up. It's like a pop-up club. And so they have this big stage. You can get VIP sections. There's like bars, and you have to wear like a wristband. And you can buy your drinks, all that. But it's just a big club that they just kind of made in Las Tablas. And so
It's
my
similar
cousin
to like a concert in some sense.
yeah, kind of like an outdoor concert. I mean, I would that's the best way to describe it. It's
Okay.
like this big outdoor concert.
Hmm.
And so my cousin was like, "Hey, you want to get tickets to Peache?" And I was like, "Sure, like let's go get tickets for Peache." So I paid for it online, whatever. $5, like it's a $5 entry. And so we go, and it was so much fun. Like I think we went like at 11, and we went until 4, like 4 a.m. And I was not aware, because I was like, because mostly in the United States, right, everything shuts down at 2, right? Technically 1:45, last call, lights up, everyone leave. So for me, I was just like, okay, how long is this going? Because it's been a good minute now. Like we've been here for a minute, and I'm still enjoying it, right? But it was just so foreign to me. And my cousin's like, "Oh no, it's until 4." And I was like, "Okay, let's keep going." And so we had a good time. You know, the way also Peache is like in the main square, like the downtown of Las Tablas. So the square was really Carnaval, if I'm being honest. That is where Carnaval happens. But it just happens to be right next door. They do a pop-up tent of like the outdoor concert or the club. and you can go there too. So you kind of have two options, right? You can either participate in carnival or you can go to peache. So our parents went to carnival, we went to peache. And so we were there till 4 a.m. They waited on us, we all get in the car together, go home, whatever. I wake up. And we wake up, I don't know, probably 11 a.m., almost noon. My uncle's cooking us breakfast. Shout out to my uncle because he was the cook the entire week. And so then my cousin's like, you want to go to peache? And I was like, yeah, what time? She's like, right now. And I was like, what? Apparently, so then this is when I learned peache is literally from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then they shut down for 2 hours to clean, but they don't really clean. And then from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., you do it again. So I was like, okay, let's go. I'll buy the ticket, let's buy our tickets and let's go again. So we went again. But the thing was, in Panama, it's extremely hot and the sun is kind of brutal. So my mom was like, put on a hat. And I was just like, nah, I'm good. I'm just going to have my outfit, my little, I think I had a bathing suit on with short, I don't even know what I had on, some shorts, cotton shorts and a tank top, something like that. Something that was if you're hot, you're going to wear this. And so then I went, we went to peache and they throw water, from this. They have these, I don't know what they're called, but they have something where they shoot out water every couple of minutes. So that way the audience isn't getting hot when you're partying. And there was these tables and all these girls were standing on these tables, while we're clubbing. And it was just an experience. I mean, a beer, $1, a shot, $1. Everyone's getting drunk and wasted and just having a good time and just enjoying it. And yeah, so we did that for a couple of days, and then eventually I did experience carnival a little bit, and here's why. But I experienced carnival a little bit, which is my mom educated me on it a little bit, which is so in the square there's a part that's called calle arriba, which means up street, and then calle abajo, which means down street. So technically there are two queens and they compete against each other. So on who's the prettiest, things like that, almost like a pageant. And they go around the square, they have their own float, they each have a theme. So it could be lion theme, I think one of them was a lion theme, one of them was an ocean theme, so different things like that. And so as they go around the square, people are cheering. Usually the queen behind her will have a band behind her, so it'll be a truck, and above the truck is the people with their band and things like that. And it's usually traditional music from Panama, and people will sing along and dance and drink and things like that. And then they go around the square. People kind of they're like, oh my gosh, she's so pretty. Or, which is something I learned, when the opposite queen is on the opposite side of the street. So when you have the queen from calle arriba going to calle abajo, the people aren't too thrilled. I mean, that's just kind of the routine. But they'll be like, fea, 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 which means ugly. So they'll say ugly, ugly. I was like, I can't say that. That's too mean. I just can't say that. But that's what people do, and they do that. And it's kind of casting their vote on who's the prettiest in the square. And so, yeah. And then during the day, because it's so hot, they have water trucks, and they'll just spray water down on everyone because it's just so hot. And that's really what I learned from carnival. It's just that. But it's a lot of fun. People pull out their traditional music. There's bands everywhere. There's food everywhere. I had this potato ball that had meat in it, and that was very interesting. I had that after I was done drinking, and I was like, snack sounds good. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was a lot of fun. I got to see my mom be drunk for the first time, and I was like, this is so fascinating to me because I've never seen this in my life. And I had a good time with that. And my mom and I were just dancing and things like that. And but the reason why I say it was short-lived was because by the third day I got sick. So I actually got very sick my body wasn't. So what happened is when we stayed at this house, the AC wasn't working. So the AC unit wasn't working. We weren't aware that it wasn't going to work. And because my body was not used to this climate, I'm sweating during the day and then I'm sleeping at night like I'm sleeping outside almost. You know what I mean? So I wasn't able to kind of cool my body down. I was just honestly like sweating, and eventually I got sick. And then one thing that I think kind of triggered it too was we found this fan, and not gonna lie, this fan kind of lived its life. Like it was kind of dusty and things like that. But we're like, listen, we got to cool down somehow. So we we put it on, and the next day is really when I got sick, and I was sick for a week. It was really bad. So I was staying in Panama for 2 weeks, and for 1 week I was sick, which kind of sucked. But I just like pulled it like a trooper, and I was just like, I'll make it. It's fine. But I did have a fever. I never threw up, but I had a fever, and I was just ill. Like I would eat, which was good, but like I would just eat, sleep, and have a fever for like a week. So it was not it. I didn't put on my pollera, which was really sad. There is a night in Carnival where you wear your pollera at night, and there's no. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's drinking, but there's no like throwing water, because polleras are so expensive. Like it's just people wear their polleras and they walk around the square and they dance and things like that. And I couldn't. That was honestly something I was looking forward to, but it did not happen. It did not happen. So, but I told my mom, I was like, okay, well, I'm coming back so I can not be sick and have the full experience. So yeah, I would definitely go back. It was such a blast, and even more of a blast just because I got to hang out with my family, and who doesn't like drinking with their family and partying and dancing with their family? So, especially when that's the vibe. So it was a good time. I loved it.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I guess the climate that it creates around the city too is just that much different. Like the vibe is turned up. Everybody's just having a good time.
Yeah,
And I guess
everyone.
it just. Oh, go ahead.
No, like kind of like you said, like everyone's on the same page. Everyone just wants to have a good time. I saw people sharing bottles, like they don't know each other, and they're just like,
Right.
"Here, do you want a shot of this?" I didn't do it, but I was just like, because like I'm just like, I don't know if I
Yeah.
should do that, but it's just everyone's on the same page. Everyone just wants to have a good time. People were making friends. That you didn't even know who they were, but you make them. You just become friends with them. Like it was a different experience, and I totally loved it. It was so good.
Hmm. I just had this quick doubt. Like, is carnival connected to religious practice in any way? Because you kind of mentioned that it's before something, or am I just
Yeah.
making that up?
No. I want to say again, I'm not religious, so I kind of briefly know about it. But I think the whole point is like you kind of like eat and drink as much as you want for 4 days, and then which is I think Fat Tuesday, and then I think Lent is the following day, which is a Wednesday, and so Lent is usually when you give up. I want to say it's Catholic, and it's
Hmm.
like when you give up something. So
Yeah.
some people give up drinking, some people give up um, sweets, and then they do that practice for a couple days, and then I think then it's Ash Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken. Ash Wednesday happens. That's when they have the little like ash on their forehead. Again, I don't practice that, but that's kind of where Carnival came from. And Carnival doesn't only happen in Panama. It happens. The biggest one, I think, in the world is Brazil, which people are most familiar with. So I want to say most Latin America seems like most countries that had like a Catholic practice during the history of that country, they typically do Carnival, I want to say.
Interesting. Gotcha. And I guess that's what leads into Easter, right?
Yeah, that's what kind of leads into Easter. I want to say it's like Ash Wednesday, and then and then Easter's right after that, or something like that, something like that. But yeah, you kind of
Gotcha.
get the point. It's kind of
Right.
it's that realm. Yeah.
Right. So it's basically, I mean, I'm just saying this in jest, but it's you have all the fun you want to have, and then you sacrifice some of those things, um, and like lead that into religious practice, still like Easter and so on. Is that a good way of
Exactly.
putting it?
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. I mean, I gave up. I decided to be sick. That was what I gave up. No, I'm just joking. I'm just joking. But yeah, no, I don't practice that. Some
Yeah,
people do. But
right,
that is the point, right? It's like you kind of get all that you want, all that all the drinking, eating, whatever, and then you kind of fall into like, okay, I'm gonna give this up.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's like when you're a kid, right? You're like
Right.
chocolate or whatever, but yeah.
On an adult scale, though.
I'm sorry.
This is like on an adult scale where you're drinking and you're partying and all of that. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like you're a kid and you're like, "Ooh, I see all these things in front of me. I'm gonna have everything." Like all that chocolate bar, that cookie, like, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Understood. Understood. Um, I guess jumping back to something slightly more serious and feel comfortable to explore this just as much as you want. Um, how do you feel like your relationship has changed with your mom? Because you mentioned how like you got to see her for the first time, like drink, and you all partied together and all of that, and like that's not something I guess as kids. Well, sure, like you might go to parties together, but when you're a kid, like your opinion of those things are very different versus when you're an adult. So how
Yeah.
has that like changed for you and like that dynamic with your parents in general?
Oh my gosh, it is so that environment is very different because again, I grew up with my dad. My dad does not drink. My dad has not drank since he was 18 years old. Like he just um my grandparents, they were alcoholics, so he grew up with that, and I totally respect it. He grew up with that, and so he decided not to drink, and I totally respect that decision. It makes complete sense. Um, so I kind of had the view that I was like, I'm never gonna drink, and be the good child that I am. And then, but it's very different, like in the United States versus I would say even Latin America. Like Latin America is a like drinking is encouraged. Like drinking is because again in Panama it's 18 and older. So when you're 18, you start drinking. You can drink with your parents. You guys can go out to restaurants and drink together. It's very 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 different. And I think growing up in the United States, where that's also very, I feel like drinking in the United States is very different than any other countries. It's very almost like shameful. It's almost like I guess it's almost like smoking. Like smoking is shameful. A lot of people perceive it as to be shameful, and again, both substances they're not good for your body, right? Like let's be real, they're not good for your body. But I think growing up with my dad, it was very much like no drinking. Like I'm never gonna drink, whatever. And then I went to go visit my mom, and it's like, yeah, you should have a drink with me. That's fine. And I'm like, okay. So um, it was very confusing because I just felt like I shouldn't drink and that it was a bad thing, but my mom would drink, and so I was very judgy for a long time about drinking, and in the terms of like you shouldn't be drinking. Like, what if you get drunk? Like, what is it? Those fears that like a kid has, because they don't understand what drinking is. And then I think as I got older, and I was drinking more and more and figuring out what I like to drink and things like that. And also drinking with my mom. I think that kind of made it more comfortable for us to like party together. And I will say I think it really only happened one time in carnival that we were like kind of drinking together. I did not really, just because at that time I technically was sick, but I didn't know what I had. I was just like, I'm fine, like I'm sure it's nothing. Um, but very different perspective. I think it almost makes it like you're in the same level. Like you kind of like you're adults together, if that makes sense. Like you're adults together. Like you're here to have a good time. Like why not have a good time with someone who you love, which is your mom. So I think that experience was a really really fun. I did kind of poke fun at her sometimes because like it was just so eye opening for me. But I remember telling my mom, I was like, "Mom, you better be this drunk on my wedding day. This is what I want. This is what I want from you. I don't care what else you give me. Give me this because I want to have a good time with my mom. I feel like every person should have a good time with their parents, and so." not saying that you can't have fun without drinking, right? But I think just having that environment one time with your parents is very, very eye-opening. Like you're just two people having fun. At the end of the day, you're two people just having fun, right? So yeah.
That's beautiful. The fact that you were able to notice the growth in relationship and how that changes over time, and that there's that freedom to where you're able to drink around your parents. Because I don't know. I mean, I personally don't drink, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'd be comfortable drinking with my parents either, even if I did.
Yeah.
But no, that's super beautiful that you guys are able to do that. That's nice. That's quite neat. But getting back into some of the modeling stuff that we had gotten into initially, what are some future aspirations for you in that sense? Be it exploring that through Oklahoma or like going somewhere else? What do you sort of see?
Hmm. I think just educating myself more and more about the modeling industry, you know, Native American, Hispanic struggles. I think Lily Gladstone is a good example of like her changing and paving a way for Native Americans. Like she's a model, and I want to say she speaks like Black. I can't remember Blackfoot, Blackfeet, but the fact that she's able to speak that language and say it in front of millions of people on TV, and these kids are like going up on the TV and just being like, "Oh my gosh, she speaks my language! Like, I'm just like her." And that is such a pivotal moment. That is such like every person has a core memory as a child, right? Every person has a core memory of like that was what made me decide this, or this is what inspired me to do this, or this is what made me feel happy or sad or things like that, right? Like you can picture a core memory in your brain. And I think it's important, and I want to do that for my community, and I think it's important and necessary to have good role models in our lives. And um I feel like I've been a really good role model to my cousins and my sister, who I love very dearly. And and I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn. Of course I've made my mistakes, but I feel like I'm very open about what mistakes I've done. um and like nothing crazy, but everyone makes mistakes, and I just want to be a model for people and to be life inspiring and to use my platform to help the community. And I think you see um Quana Rose is another one who like advocates for her community, and she helps her community, and she did it before she was even modeling. And but she used that to get into modeling, and in the modeling world use her platform to help. And I think those are really important people to have as our models in the United States and in the world, and I kind of want to be I want to be part of that. Like I want to be a part of that change. I want to be in a room of important people who make changes um, for our communities and for the people. And I don't know. I just get really worked up about it. Like I just really want to do that. And I'm not gonna lie, sometimes it's hard because I feel like again you have to know networks and connections and things like that. But um yeah, I just really want to change the community. I want to learn more. I want to know what our biggest issues are. I want to help with that. And I I think it's something that I'm learning still, because I I wouldn't say I have a big platform, but I also it's hard. It's really hard too, because you don't want to be too political, because that turns people
Hmm.
away, and I feel like that's a big word that people like once they hear political, they're out. And sometimes I do feel that way, and because sometimes political issues can create a lot of hatred, and I don't like that. But it is part of trying to make a change in the community, and I think it's something that I'm trying to work myself into, especially for my family and my closest friends who aren't really in those situations of like policies and politicals and things like that. And so I will say I'm not um, as aware as I should be, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it, and yeah, I just want to help. I want to help in any way that I can. I might as well. I'm here on this planet to do the planet a service and to help my community and help the people, and that's what I'm here for. So yeah.
That's awesome. That's very beautiful. I feel like I've repeated those adjectives a lot. But no, the fact that what you said about like how politics can sort of drive people away, it is quite true, Rick. I think if you tell your audience that you fall into one camp, the people of the opposite camp are very likely not going to
Mm-hmm.
pay attention anymore. That's just sort of the world we live in. I do feel like that's kind of unfortunate because we should be listening to either side, even if we disagree with some of their beliefs. And sure, there are
Mm-hmm.
certain things that there are certain boundaries that need to be drawn in terms of what's okay and what's not okay. But like I think we should be still able to like engage with the other side, even if they're not in the same bucket as us, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, yeah, but no, that's awesome that so that's something you're working towards and that
Mm-hmm.
you want to make that change. So kudos to you for working towards that. That's super
Thank
cool,
you.
and I wish you the very best with all of that and with the modeling journey itself. And thank you so much for taking the time to join me once again and have this conversation. We know we had some internet troubles in between, but
Yes.
I was glad that we were able to have this conversation. So thank you for taking the time.
Absolutely. And yeah, I appreciate you for having me be here. And yeah, I'm. It sucks that we had technical difficulties, but listen, everyone has it. Every podcaster, every YouTuber, anyone that's used technology for business, it just happens. Corporate
Yeah,
America happens.
right.
It's gonna
Right. Shit
happen.
happens. It's all good.
Exactly, shit happens. So, but no,
Right.
I appreciate it, and I know it's an hour and a half out of our day, and that's a big amount of time that you can be doing other things, but I just appreciate you asking me to be here to take up that time. So thank you. I appreciate it, and for me allowing to talk about, what it's like to be a model, and in Oklahoma, and I'm excited to see what else I do. And then maybe I'll come back. Or maybe I might be back.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know.
Hey, if you want to be back, you're more than welcome to be back. I'd be more than happy to do that again. Do this again rather. So yeah, by all means. But for now, thank you so much once again. And for those of you listening and watching, thank you so much. We will see you guys next time.